So I just want to quickly check that we've got a very patient speaker, Drew Hamilton.
Yes.
Yep, I can hear you.
Great, thanks, Drew. So I haven't introduced you, Drew, yet. He's been the mysterious speaker on the end of the phone, but I will introduce the next two speakers shortly. But because we're here for the Space Challenge, I did want this part of the session to be a bit of Q&A, if you have any questions. I've got a couple based on the things you came up with when you walked in. But based on what we've seen today, are there any questions at this stage?
If you're not interested in space, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. What's in it for the ordinary Joe public that we can engage people to get on board?
Well,
So we can excite people to get on board. What's in? Because everybody goes, "What's in it for me?" You know?
right. Yeah. I mean, all these technologies that we're sort of we're using Antarctica and space to sort of get people to push what they are capable of, but all these things like the mapping and the navigation and the sensors, they all have real world application. Things like from autonomous vehicles operating in mountains to there's even some companies here pushing, they're developing robotic tractor vehicles and stuff like that. And all this, Antarctica is sort of like the tough problem. If you can work out there, then all these things can be demonstrated for all these other applications that are more like ordinary economic activity, and you can make your own company that way.
So for the even narrow-minded person who's going about their daily life, how is it going to be of benefit to them?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just providing more opportunities for people in the community, and so. I mean, each of these companies that our friends started in a garage, they now have 200 people working for them, and so it's somebody with an idea that if you can take advantage of that on a global stage, you can build an entire company around it. And there's and one thing we're trying to also do is in some communities we're encouraging, for example, for the GIS software that is now freely available and satellite data that's coming down. There's an entire Maori community that's using it to manage land of the iwi, because this is the best way to manage land or even a city development is using this software, and so we're offering training so you can use that. So we're offering training to if you're interested in attempting the challenge, but the training materials are available if you want to use this for your own community.
What if you have teams of people who just like to use their minds and think creatively, but are not really interested in developing any further?
Mm-hmm.
So they come up with concepts?
Yeah. I mean, there's also there's an interesting group in Christchurch that just wants to do a brainstorming session and just get people to think about wild ideas that it's sort of a fun problem that.
Yeah, and normally I actually think that disruption normally happens at the intersection of disciplines, and so you don't normally just need the technologist. You also need the creative person to actually bring out those ideas. We've done, at least in the US, we've done this kind of like design thinking types of sessions where you bring people with different disciplines, and that's actually when the out-of-the-box type of ideas come out.
A
and
lot
that's
of
been
people,
proven many times over.
A lot of people just need to be encouraged to realize that their wild ideas might actually be the right one. And just in the last week, I'm not giving too much away, but we've heard about robotic spiders and robotics as snakes as part of the solution, and so. So those were some wild ideas, but they might be the right ones, and you might suddenly see New Zealand robotic snakes in Antarctica.
So going the next step, if a brainstorm session occurred and some reasonable ideas came up, can we just give you the ideas?
No, we're trying to make a community where you can either join teams or individually you can go in and you can, there's no application fee, you can put in your name and you can put in your idea and give it a shot. You can keep developing the application and sort of saving your temporary thing, and it's only when you hit submit at the bottom that it finally is submitted. So.
Yeah, what we really want, I mean, the ideal scenario would be that if we create these forums, and we've been talking to a bunch of people also very similar, where they don't think that they can do it by themselves, but they're like somebody who's the ideas person rather than the tech person. So an ideal scenario is we can find people to connect with each other, where you got the idea guy and then the guy who can actually do it on the tech side and create a team, then that's I think a win. So if we can create those communities, I think that's how it actually plays out the best.
So would we do that within the portal as say as an individual, and then put out a question, is there anybody on my wavelength type of thing?
Yeah, that's the ideal scenario.
Yeah, and while we're still working on making that easier to use, we've also got, for example, a Facebook group that's a little easier for
Oh,
people.
so there's a Slack channel.
Yeah,
That's
So we're trying any kind of communication path we can
Yeah.
think of.
Are there any age brackets or restrictions around age for
No.
engagement?
So when we talk about the challenge, we talk about entrepreneurs, and that definition of entrepreneur is that it could be a high school kid who has a brilliant idea and just doesn't know how to kind of put that into a technology solution, to potentially a company who's already maybe have the solution already, but is using it in a different industry. And then so you can just port it to this particular problem.
Yeah, I send my 11-year-old down to Hamilton for young engineers, and she does robotics down there, and we've got coding happening in Whangarei, so there's little kids doing some amazing stuff, and if we paired them with some engineers of an older nature, we could have some really cool stuff going on. So I'm just wondering about getting some of our babies to some great, technicians.
Yeah.
The information here is very, very broad brush. How do you get a bit grainier on that so that you've got specific things to solve?
Yeah, it is. It is intentionally very broad, and we're letting the judges, say, okay, this looks like they've really got a good idea, and it would help, in certain classes of traverses, or for example, right now there's a lot of activity that goes around Scott Base out to 10 or 20 kilometers, and beyond that it just requires such a major effort that they limit the science to say only in that area. And so we have some of those reports that we list. They have these wish lists of we wish we could go out with these traverses much farther. We wish we could operate beyond just the ideal weather, ideal environment. We wish we could send rovers out and things like that. And so we're keeping it so broad because we just want anybody to, if they want to attack some part of the problem, they could encourage them to put in their solution, and then let the judges sort out which they think is going to be useful for advancing the science across the board.
Yeah,
We have
so the resources, essentially, the kind of like the more finer detail of the information are all on the resources page that we were talking about. Like, so there's this like, I don't remember, 75-page report that came from COMNA, that the 30-country sort of consortium that is talking about like all of the difficulties and the challenges and the wish list, for example.
So is that quite specific as to what the physical challenges are?
Yeah, there's a lot more, and as we go along, we're going to be, with groups that are interested in long traverses or something like that. We're going to try to be collecting more information and feeding it into the community. for example, we just learned that there's this one particular site in Antarctica that's really critical for, that's just beyond the Ross Ice Shelf on the coast, that they tried for 4 years with a team of 60 and they couldn't get there. And so they finally got some folks there, but that's the one place that snow accumulates, and everything you leave there gets covered by meters of snow, and so you have to spend most of your time digging out stuff, and they can't prepare a runway or anything to fly things in, so they have to. So it's and they consider that really essential to monitoring, what's going to be the sea level rise in the next few decades. Is that one spot, and they just have stuck. There's been millions of dollars and getting nowhere. So
It just sounds like it's being buried in bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
maybe.
Sure, no.
Is there any other questions? I have a few comments based on what's just been discussed before we move on, but I add another question right now. So just on what we've just discussed on the questions, there's a couple of things I just want to make sure that at least I'm clear about and I'm communicating with others. The question about age barrier, the other question about teams and groups. I found there's a bit of a link there where it sounds like the activity that's happening here, or that you know of, could be assisted by the tools that you've mentioned, porthole, other things. And my only question on that is, the porthole is up and running? Or
The portal,
a bit buggy, but
yeah. So the portal's up. The directory's there. You can actually register a group, a team, an org, or an individual. But the forums are not yet. So we're hoping that, next week it will actually be there. However, as a workaround, there's also a Slack channel that we've already put up there too, that people could start asking questions.
What's Slack channel? Sorry, I'm
Slack is like a software product. I can share some more details with that and have a separate conversation with anyone who has any questions about anything we just heard.
And what's the name of the Facebook group?
Yeah, it's so, and the Facebook group is SpaceBase NZ. That's Facebook.
So Northland's obviously a big part of trying to make this happen in Northland. So if there's any technical things or anything else that keeps around the edge of the space challenge that gets in the way, please talk to me. And I'll give you all my contact details before we get to that. Thank you.
One more question.
Yeah.
This presentation, is it online as well?
Yeah.
Repeated?
Yeah, and we've been we have a YouTube channel for SpaceBase, which is where we've been putting all our videos and also links to the presentation. And so, and
you
I
can
think
find the YouTube channel through the space.co.
Yeah. And one other thing before I forget, Humanity Star, launched by Rocket Lab, should have a fantastic viewing on Sunday at 9:33 p.m. Starting in the south and going almost directly overhead.
For 90 seconds.
Humanity Star.
Yeah, so it'll be moving quickly, but we managed to see it a week ago, and it was just so it flashes a little bit and then dark and then flash and then dark flash because it's the rotating with the mirrors.
They put that on Sputnik.
I don't know. I mean, this is.
There's an app that you can follow.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. This one that I'm using, Heavens Above, is
okay. Oh, that tracks it.
Yeah.
Heavens Above.
Yeah. But also, it's now at the time when humanitystar.com, I think, is going to be giving you.
But it's a pretty short window, isn't it? Like it's across the horizon.
Yeah, it goes pretty fast. It's
yeah.
It's like 4 minutes across the sky. Very impressive first satellite launch by the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what Humanity Star is, you can Google it. It sounds like there's a dedicated website for it. So there's more information on it too. Yeah, it's a man-made object in orbit whizzing over our heads.
I'm New Zealand.
Courtesy of New Zealand. So, based on what we've just discussed, it sets up and nicely the next couple of speakers that we've organised.